Hi, I'm Michael Pear, owner of MLP Consulting. I started my apprenticeship in 1992 with J.B. Rogers. I also helped start the CAD department in 1996. I later moved on to University Mechanical, where I was the HVAC BIM Superintendent. In 2015 was when I started MLP Consulting. I'd like to welcome you to our podcast. It's called BIM with the BIMJAs.
Okay, let me get in the zone. Hold on. Don't hit record yet.
La 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 la.
Me too. Today our host is CODY AHERN, the building trades journeyman and the BDC manager here at MLP Consulting in Phoenix, Arizona. CODY, take it away, brother.
Hey, how's it going? CODY AHERN with MLP Consulting. Been with Mike about 5 years, just kind of running the VDC program over here and getting my feet wet and learning a lot in the industry and hoping to grow as we go. We got AHEPAOJA, who's our sheet metal genius and knows all things engineering related. We got Paul FROECHTE, who would be our piping superintendent, but steam fitter OG by trade. And Gary Polzano, our plumbing superintendent, who's been in the trenches for 30 years plus. What is your professional background, Gary, and why did you choose to come to MLP?
My professional background is went through apprenticeship school in Chicagoland area back in the 80s. Been in the trade since 1982 and worked at all aspects of construction from houses to high rises in 2 or 3 different states. I have also done specialty systems like acid waste, grease waste, all kinds of different things involved in hospitals. So that's my background. And why I came to MLP was I worked with Mike and CODY previously at one of my employers, and I had a good relationship with both of them, and I really enjoyed working with the software and understanding how it worked, and the opportunity arose for me to move over to MLP, and I did it. And it's been great ever since, going almost on 3 years now.
You've got a different perspective of the industry from behind the screen as opposed to being in the field?
I like being behind the screen. I didn't think that I would because I was in the field for so long, but it's really been a nice transition. I enjoy it. It's like a second phase of my career where I felt like I'd done a lot in my career in the field. This was all brand new, and it was challenging, and I'm still learning all the time, and I really do enjoy it.
Awesome. And then we have Eric, who, as far as I know, I heard he used to work in the field, but as long as I've known him, and I think even stories I've heard, he's been behind the computer. So what's your background, Eric, and how did you end up at MLP?
So my background, I started off in the shop in Boston, Massachusetts. I was in a sheet metal shop for 3 years, pre-apprentice there, moved out to Arizona, and then spent 3.5 years in the field where I got asked to join the VDC program where I met Mike Pear, and we worked together for, I want to say 6, 7, 8 years after that at in another VDC office, and then I went on to estimating and service because I wanted to get fully rounded in the trade, and then he had started up MLP and talked about how he wanted to make it not only do well but make a difference in construction in general, just a different perception of VDC and construction workers and the professionalism, and I was all on board for that, and I've gotten nothing but that here. It's been great. So that's why I joined MLP.
Awesome. Then how about you, Paul? I guess last but not least.
Similar story. I started my apprenticeship in 1991 as a steam fitter in Milwaukee. So I was a steam fitter here for 10 years-ish. Then moved to Arizona and became a pipe fitter in Arizona for however many years. And then now I'm back in the wonderful state of Wisconsin. So my experience is everything from residential to pharmaceutical to foundries to process piping to large commercial, industrial, healthcare. I've been very fortunate to be able to see a lot of different things. Process piping is a lot different than just your simple heating hot water and chilled water. Done a little bit of work at semiconductor type plants like Intel, and I can't think of the other one right now.
Motorola
Was another one, so that'd be a third one. But then there was another one that I can't remember the name of it, but did some extensive work at that plant. As far as how I ended up at MLP, I have a similar story to Gary's, where MLP was doing work for me on another job that I was on through another contractor, and I became very interested in how the whole modeling process happens. And Mike definitely had a need for a guy with piping experience.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing kind of led to another, and here I am. I am now a apprentice reveteer.
Apprentice reveteer. So you and Gary both have 30 plus years of field experience, probably 60 between the two of you, and you've ran work. You've received obviously numerous amounts of drawings from multiple contractors, drafters, engineers. You've worked with multiple BIM companies. You've done BIM. You've seen BIM. It wasn't new to you when you got here. What was it like being on the other side, receiving those things, working with other people's work as opposed to providing it now?
I personally think some of the most obvious things are is when you have a person that's doing BIM that doesn't fully understand the construction process. I guess one of the biggest cases in point is when you receive drawings that are dimensioned off of walls and etc. that don't exist yet. I think Gary and I think all you guys can attest to this, that the building goes up, the utilities are in, and then usually walls go up. So by the time the walls are in, most piping and plumbing and HVAC systems are already installed. So from a simple sheet perspective, having somebody know what they want to see in the field has been, I think, huge. It's a huge difference when you have an experienced guy not only drawing, designing, and coordinating, but then also producing sheets that are going to be used ultimately by the fellows in the field.
Yeah. You know what's crazy? There's a couple of superintendents that have asked us to dimension off of walls. I don't know if you remember that, Cody, but early on there was a sheet metal superintendent we were working with was wanting all his dimensions off of walls, and we're like, are you sure the walls are going to be up when you're out in the field? Well, yeah. I'm like, okay, so we gave him dimensions off of walls, and walls weren't up when he was needing them off of column lines. And so, yep.
You want to be in before the walls. You let them
That's
frame
right.
out.
Yeah.
You're a lot more efficient if you can go at 100 miles an hour without walls in your way, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, I think giving the client what they want and what they need are two different things sometimes. And with your experience, you're able to kind of navigate them to making sure what they want is what they need. And I think that's truly helpful in this industry.
I think you're right, and I think part of it is, early on, I think that with our the questions that we ask our clients early on, I think that really helps kind of clear the muddy waters early on if we know exactly what they want up front, rather than handing them something that they don't want. Asking the appropriate questions up front, I think, helps out immensely.
Yeah, that's a good point. You get a lot of these BIM contractors that don't see value in BIM, and they complain that they lose their money on jobs. Eric or Gary, do you have any Anything to say to that? When a client would say, you know, BIM's a waste of money, I don't think we should do it.
We just had an experience where we had a job interview with a potential client, and they didn't fully understand the value. And I guess, as speaking for myself, in the beginning, I didn't really either. But once I got involved in the process, when I was in the field and saw the value of it, it just took a minute for me to understand where the value is. And because I lived through that experience, I can easily explain it to any of our customers or any new potential customers as well. There's significant savings if you do it right, you ask the right questions, as Paul previously said, and it brings a tremendous amount of value, especially for prefabrication.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and I could see where that perspective comes from, because at the end of the day, VDC is overhead until it makes money in the field. I mean, that's just clear, right? We don't create anything until we don't create any profit or any money for the company until it saves problems in the field. That's what we're there to do, is to make the field more efficient, go better, get ahead of the problems that they don't have to deal with in the field. I mean, we see it all the time. If it's a problem for one person, it's a problem for 6 in the field. Everybody's going to discuss it. You pull this guy over. You're not talking about some apprentices. You're talking superintendents. You're talking general foremans. That's a lot of money wasted. And so it's sometimes hard to see that value. But for those guys in the field, I know I've talked to quite a few of them. You know, Gary, Paul being one of a couple of the clients, that the value is seen when you mitigate problems that were unforeseen.
I think, to your point, then I think when you're using BIM, gone are the days of the plumber and the sheet metal worker and the steam fitter battling for space and corridors, because their stuff is more important. Everybody's stuff is the most important.
Correct.
You know, as far as I'm concerned, any kind of hydronic pipe takes precedence over everybody else, and Gary feels the same way. So, you know, when you have a coordinated model you're handing somebody, a lot of that's gone. Now the superintendents and the foreman and the rank and file can focus on what needs to be focused on, and that's installing, not battling for space.
Right, I agree.
And we're a conduit of information. I mean, I think that in itself is a huge time saver. We, as VDC guys, we get all the information for the sheet metal system, or for the piping system, or for the plumbing system. So the project manager has a question, he can go to you, like, because he's got so many other things to worry about. Or if the field guy says, hey, why did we do this? Oh, because RFI such and such, or because this changed or that changed. So not only are we producing stuff that makes you more efficient in the field, we are a conduit of information for everybody within the project, because we've been dealing with it day in and day out. We have a view of the whole project as opposed to parts of the project. So.
And one thing that I've noticed is a lot of the general contractors want to do BIM, but they're not doing it right. I don't see it being utilized to its full potential. I've seen contractors that do it great and they get the value out of it. And I've seen others that they're not using it how it should be used, and they don't like it. So I'm hoping that through these podcasts and through these interviews, we can help bridge that gap between BIM and the people that don't know how to utilize it. What can we do to help these contractors utilize BIM, get their bill of materials, get their clearance zones modeled in, make sure all of their content's in, how they're going to fabricate it, down to the joints and the fittings and their insulation. But that goes two ways. You have to have a client that's willing to give you answers and provide you with that information, and a general contractor that's willing to hold everyone accountable. What's your experience been with that, Paul, since you've started MLP?
I think the first thing that comes to mind, which I would say I can't mention the project, but you'll know what I'm talking about when I say that there was an air handler in a basement that was the basis of design. Air handler was not even close to fitting properly, and we had to talk them into giving up 2 parking spaces that were like for the highest up people at that particular building. And remember what a battle that was. And you know that the engineer was pretty adamant that was the appropriate air handler. But at the end of the day, when we had to finally show him this air handler is not going to work. So we had to change kind of the orientation of it. And I think the air handler itself, the selection was changed because of what we had found with many things, not limited to walls, louver locations, very valuable parking spaces, as silly as that sounds, but they didn't want to give those up. Remember, if you remember what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think also on that same exact project you're referring to, I mean, we're not engineers, but because of the amount of experience that we have here at MLP, we're able to identify these issues because we've either been involved in the past with them or just our years of experience has propelled us to be able to catch these issues to help. And as Paul stated, that was a real battle, but in the end, they said, okay, you guys are right, and probably saved them tens of thousands of dollars, maybe even $100,000 if they would have had it in there and it didn't work. Could have been a lot. It could have been a really, really big deal.
mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Something interesting I read this morning in Snips. It's funny that you brought that up, Cody, but there's a study by Dodge Data and Analytics of sheet metal ducting contractors. So if you use BIM to its fullest, which some of our contractors do, a lot of them just want to check the box. But if you use BIM to the fullest, it reduces waste by 50%, increased labor production by 50%, improves cost performance by 43%, and better installation quality and reduces errors by 36%. I've been looking for numbers like that for quite a while, and it's been more of a guess than hearsay, but it's cool that they came out with that, with those analytics this morning.
Those are great numbers too, because we've all been there too. By the time you get done with a project, if you do it the old school way, you end up sending back a truckload of pipe, valves, and fittings, where when something is BIMmed, you should have next to zero if everybody's doing their job appropriately. Obviously, you're going to order a couple extra onesie twosie type things, as Gary knows, some of the smaller items, but yeah, when we can pull up a 100% accurate bill of material for somebody, then there's almost no excuse for having these huge amounts of materials going back to wherever they go, to someone's shop, to the vendor, where you lose 50% restock. That's all gone.
Handling it twice, moving it around, yeah. A lot of waste involved with that.
If you're doing BIM the correct, what we would like to see, in a perfect world, right, where you would know exactly, whenever we do a hospital, we have this percentage of saturation ratio of fittings for piping, for plumbing. So your estimates get tighter, your field labor gets tighter. Everything gets a little bit tighter because you have that backup in data. If we were doing VD, because it's a snapshot in time of what actually happened in the field.
Yep.
Right. So it's really interesting. I wish that more companies would embrace this part of it, the estimating part of it, where you could take this existing job, where we started, where we ended, how we got there, and then bring it back to the beginning, and how much more efficient this construction could be in general. How much more we could see into the future, if you will, of the project, just by analyzing a project that's very similar.
Yeah. I mean, most definitely, it's at the point now where we can place points where hangers are. The points are embedded in those hangers, and you can bring them straight to the Trimble. You got to make sure all that's accounted for in the schedule, though, or else you're out there, you're core drilling rather than shooting the points before they pour. So I think, the schedule is a big thing, and the client being on board. But hopefully over time, we could bridge that gap and allow our clients, by utilizing MLP, to get the most out of the BIM that they're paying for.
It seems like a lot of the top clients, the most intelligent superintendents, they're using BIM to the full potential.
Yeah.
And they're using it the way it should be used, and it helps them. I mean, I think that's why they're top.
I've definitely seen in cases where the ball can be dropped if you miss the beat on QA/QC, and you're providing bombs and points, and those get out in the field, and then you have the opposite effect where you're costing the client money, and that's something we never want to do. So I guess, Paul, Gary, what do you guys do for QA, QC to assure these things don't happen?
Well, I guess I'll just go first. And I think here at MLP, the best QA, QC program I've seen yet is kind of one we all created together, and that is we all collectively look at it together and collaborate amongst ourselves to ensure that what we give our clients is the best possible product, and try to catch every single little mistake or blurred line on a drawing or anything to make our stuff not look so clean. So I feel Paul's probably one of the best in the industry. He catches things that I miss. He's got a very, very sharp eye for these things. And with Eric and myself and even CODY, we all work together and we try to minimize any mistakes that we may have before we send stuff out to the client.
Mm-hmm.
I think on top of that, I think that remaining very humble when you are sending something for somebody to look at to QA, QC, that's something I had to kind of get over. If I send something to Gary, hey, what do you think of this? And if he starts picking it apart, I would take that very personally. And we about come to blows, not really, but that was something for me to get over, being on this side of things, is let somebody critique my work and not consider it a personal attack. And learn from it. And I think that's the way we all are. I don't think anybody here is that arrogant that they're going to be upset that somebody's critiquing their work. So I think that's helped all of us, really.
Agreed.
No, I think I like to purposely make mistakes, Paul, just to see if you'll catch them. And you always do.
Thank you.
So I can attest to Gary right there when he says Paul's the best in the business. I know, Eric, you're on the sheet metal side, so there's probably a little bit of a different method to your QA, QC. You want to kind of fill us in?
Well, different. I don't know if it's a different method. It's just because you walk down the systems just like anything else, right? You make sure you have everything right, everything's connected. You have the right VAV boxes, the right equipment, all that stuff. You got the and you go from the contracts to there, and then anywhere you see a problem, you highlight it, or you have it's a team effort. So I don't know if it's any different. Just what we're looking at is different, right? So, making sure you detail. Big thing is going to the details, because a lot of times they will be drawn one way on the plans, but the details override what's drawn, or the PNIDs for piping, or for us the flow diagrams. So that's generally how I walk through it. Is the specs are the first thing to make sure we're meeting a spec range. For our I have your insulation specs and your gauge specs, whatever, and your pressure specs down. So it's 2-inch, 4-inch, 6-inch, whatever it needs to be. Your insulation is correct, and then it's just following out the system again, making sure you capture all the details and the flow diagrams.
Yeah, QA/QC is it's crucial. We have it included in every estimate and every job, and it's not a negotiable. I think when we first started, I did negotiate at one time, and the client came back and said, well, the client was going to QC for us. I said, we could take out these hours if you do the QC for us. Well, you don't want somebody to see something that's not correct. You don't want your client to see something that's not correct. So I learned from that project. From then on, we always include it in the budget. I don't even show them that it can be negotiable. It's part of the deal. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's important, because when you go buy a box of Pop-Tarts, you expect them to be right, but you don't expect to pay a different price for them to check to make sure they're right. I think as a customer to our clients, that's our obligation. So that's a good point. So I guess all in all, with all that being said, Paul, what do you think would define a successful project at the end of the day?
What defines a successful project?
Yeah.
I think the client coming back and saying, here's the next one.
That's
a good point.
I think
that's
that
perfect.
having the happy client rather than a client that's constantly saying, when are you going to be done? Why is it like this? Why didn't you do this? Why, you know what I'm saying? When we hand them something that's 99.9% perfect, and having them say, you have definitely exceeded all expectations. That's, I think, what anybody likes to hear, but I like to hear that. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me
I
too.
would say what makes a successful project is a team of people that are willing to work together to overcome and solve any issues that may arise or may have gotten looked over, and to be able to do those things without in an environment where it's not a fight, it's more of a team effort, and that's definitely what we do here at MLP. And we try to get our clients into that same degree. I don't really, I said earlier, I'm going on 3 years, and I can't think of one time that we actually had an irate customer that was so upset that they were yelling at us. It just doesn't happen, because we really care and we put everything we have into it to make all of our projects successful.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, success project is one that makes money, right? And we give the client a system or systems that work either as intended or better than intended. Like we've made, I know value engineering is not usually a good word, but we've increased what the client has got, and they're still able to walk away, with a profit. And to that, a lot of as-built type stuff, if the client has to go back and do as-built, that's a safety thing. And so where the client can have their guys working in a systematic fashion, it reduces the risk of the workers there. There is a big health thing where you're not hanging a valve, 6 feet above a ceiling, or a VAV box, 5 feet above a ceiling, where now the maintenance crew has to go and maintenance that every year. They get hurt every time because they have to crawl up through these pipes. And so, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's one that we can deliver a system that's better than what was asked for, and the client could still make a profit. So
yeah, you definitely forgot to mention making sure you got enough clearance above those cable trays as well, Eric.
Yes, there are some unique problems that come up.
So I guess on the topic of problems, when a problem does arise in a BIM model or in the field, I know you'd mentioned one about an air handler earlier, kind of what we do to mitigate that. I guess, what do you do, Eric, when a problem comes up? I know you deal with those quite often.
Really, I try to analyze the problem from every angle, really. See who's involved, who's going to be involved. If it's just something I've come across, like an air handler. Okay, what is going to have to happen? Who is involved? Let's get them together. Let's get this worked out. And I mean, if it's something we can fix, you fix it. You let whoever needs to know, and you move on. But like big problems like air handlers, stuff like that always takes, you got drains, you got pipe, you got ductwork, you got walls, you've got clearances, you have move in, move out for an air handler. You have to, if your air handler gets 22 inches wider, well, now you can't get the air handler out of the building if you don't have a move in and out path. So you want to be helpful to the project, even if it's difficult, right? And some people just want to push it to the side, say, you know what, let's just get it going. But I think the whole point to us being what we do is getting ahead of the problem, and getting the right people in the room to make sure the problem is solved before the field has to deal with it, before they're bringing in a crane to pull this stuff out and go, uh-oh, we have a problem, So that's, depending on what it is, it's, if we don't have the right submittals, then making that known, but also making a plan for, okay, this is the possible problem that's going to come into it. So yeah, just making a plan for possible problems, and then when problems do arise, making a plan to fix them before it affects the most amount of people.
Yeah, that can definitely be a challenge sometimes, because a lot of times the client wants to do whatever is most effective to their schedule or most effective to cost. And is that always the best way to solve the problem? Probably not. But I think at the end of the day, our job is just to make sure they're aware of it, and they'll tell us how to fix it.
We're a conduit of information, like I say every time. We're the conduit
Yep.
of information. If we're not going to tell them, then maybe they won't find out, and that's going to become a problem later.
I know for me, and I know at least Paul, it's pretty difficult to move on from those kind of things sometimes while you're waiting for an answer. What do you guys do to stay efficient on the projects when you're waiting for these problems to be solved? I know there's a lot of jobs where we have to stop and wait and stop and wait, and how can we remain more efficient working through these problems as they arise while we wait for 15 answers from 15 people?
I think ultimately what I do is, if there's more than just one person on a job, in other words, if it's me and at least one other person, my job, as far as I'm concerned, is staying ahead of that person and trying to identify the problem areas, hopefully before they get there, at least have something in the works. That's kind of the way I was in the field. I can see Gary's agreeing. I mean, that's kind of our job, is we're supposed to be weeks ahead of whoever is coming behind us or whoever we're gonna assign a task to. So obviously in the BIM world, you can't always do that, because what we're doing is just so fast paced, so fluid, and things can be changing so quickly that you can't always keep up with potential problem areas, but we try to do the best we can with what we're given. So staying ahead to the best of our ability, I think is key, at least from my perspective.
Owners, GCs, and clients, they want to make the best decisions possible. When they feel they're not in that position to make the best decision possible, they're going to be hesitant to make a decision. So if you can provide them with the most information you possibly can, it's going to be easier for the BDC. It's going to be easy for your guys, so you can give them direction. It's going to be easy for the whole project. You can't just tell them to make a decision. Sometimes you have to lead them to the decision. So
I think that's very well put. Lead them to the decision.
Yeah.
Because like you said, we are all more intimate than anybody else with the project at that point.
Yeah.
So, absolutely.
Yeah, that's definitely always been one of my challenges since coming into VDC and doing BIM, is just waiting, and because I'm one of those people that wants to do it perfect and then it's done and move on, and having to wait, a lot is it's been something I've had to learn to do. But I think, between you guys telling me it's not your problem, Cody, hold up, just don't worry about it. It goes a long way. But that's my challenges. I mean, Gary, what are your challenges in the industry that you've noticed just from a BIM side of things? What could be the most challenging part of your job?
I think the most challenging part is getting information as quick as we need it, and I understand that challenge, because there's a lot of times decisions aren't made, like with equipment, or sometimes there are some value engineering that is going on behind the scenes, and things change. So submittals and information is probably the biggest challenge that we face, and we always try to get the client to help us, or at least give us an alternative so we can keep going with the job. And a lot of times the alternatives to equipment especially aren't really majorly different. So that I say was probably the biggest challenge, is getting the information.
Well, yeah, I mean, you guys said that a successful job is saving money, and can't save money when you're late on things, time's money, and you want to be successful, right?
Agreed.
Go along with the submittals too. There's often times when the clients told us to use the basis of design on the submittals, and then they come back and say, oh, you know, we got a great deal on the buyout. Now we're going to use these ones. Well, that can cause all kinds of problems in coordination. It can cause other trades to have to re-coordinate. We have to redo some things. So it may end up costing the client more to come back with a decision late, I guess. So it can be difficult.
And to that point, that I think that is a kind of a problem sometimes when we get in early like we like to, and we're going to use equipment that's on the basis of design rather than what's actually going to be submitted on. And I think sometimes clients don't fully understand the ramifications of being halfway through a project and all of a sudden now you're going to change all your major equipment or a lot of it. That's kind of a big deal.
Yes. Big deal.
Yeah.
Yep. New ATU or VAV, but it has a different sound rating, so now you had to have a 3-foot sound attenuator to it. Well,
exactly.
Now you need to make room for a 6-foot VAV instead of a 3-foot VAV. You know,
in 400 different places on the building too.
Exactly.
It's definitely important. I mean, what kind of skills would you say are required to be a successful modeler or fabricator in the BIM industry? I guess any AEs. You all do different trades, but it's all the same,
I would
right?
say there's a bit of humility that's involved, but as far as actual skills, I would say being able to think in 3 dimensions, first of all. And that's actually difficult to do. It's not as easy as people think it is. To be able to visualize before it even goes in. And then attention to detail. There's attention to detail, be able to visualize in 3D, and then it takes a certain tenacity, if you will, to get the right information, not just the information that's easily available. Because every project has its kind of idiosyncrasies of where you find different information. And so wanting to do a good job and having tenacity to get to the right answer instead of the easy one, those are the 3 things I would say.
I would agree to attention to detail.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I agree with everything you just said, but attention to detail is probably number 1 for sure. A willingness to learn. You know, Gary and I, as many years experience as we have, we learn something new every day.
Just for Eric here, do you find blue shirts bring strength and unity to projects? Because
of course, it's a calming color, and you know me, I'm calm.
Yeah.
I thought you said common color.
Calming.
Calming.
Very zen.
No, I just don't like black, and it's a slimming color, I guess.
Hey, well, I think that's about all the time we have for today. Thank you guys so much for joining MLP, and we're truly blessed to have people of your caliber, of your experience here. I'm blessed. I know we're all blessed. But yeah, thanks for everyone. Thanks for your time. Thanks for everybody that listened to it. Thanks for everybody that watched it.
See you guys.
All right, guys. We'll see ya.
See you.
See ya.